Good morning. We're waiting for or good afternoon, wherever you are. We're waiting for a couple more people to join here, so we'll get started in a moment. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Dave Drew. I'm the Director of Sales for the West at IP Configure, and we're going to jump into the webinar on a product overview of IP Configure. So to give you a little background about IP Configure, who we are, where we come from, our company's been established for quite some time. We are a US-based company based in Norfolk, Virginia. We were established in 2004, and we are a privately held company. We're one of the last few VMS companies out there that are privately held. Uh, our engineering is led by our own team of developers. We develop all of our software and the changes to the software in-house. We have 2 PhDs on staff that run a team of developers. And we are carried globally through a distribution channel. So our go-to-market is through a distribution strategy. Just bear with me here. So starting off with our products, I want to go through what our different products are and talk about a little bit about, what the products are, where they fit, and everything else. IP Configure has had a very solid history from the beginning in government, schools, and in the past few years, we've moved into a lot different spaces, and we've become very, very large in a retail space, hospitality, hospitals, things of that nature. So what we've seen in the past, our company back in the day started with a product called ESM, no longer actively selling that product. It still exists in some applications, but we founded the company and founded the products around simplicity. And that's really where our market was simplifying what a video management system is. When you go into video management systems, a lot of them are very, very large amounts of training to get through a software. And not all the time do you go through a training and find everything that you need in that training to accurately know what the software is and what it does. So we built our original product around simplicity, but we saw that we had a lot of enterprise customers, very, very large installations that were buying our product for very small deployments. And whether that was the simplicity or price point or whatever it was, we just saw the need to go and revisit the product. So a few years back, we went and designed a new product, and that's what we're going to go over today as our Orchid software. But it was really aimed at being these 5 things. Number one, being accessible, being able to hit your video from anywhere that you need to get to that video. Being secure. Today, cybersecurity is a huge word. It's on everybody's mind. So we wanted to have a secure way of getting your video from point A to point B, especially with remote accessibility. Being adaptive. We continue to grow this software to meet customer demands, not just developing what we think is the best thing. We take a lot of feedback from customers from projects and build our product around what that feedback is. Also, on top of the customer feedback, being adaptive to the changing technologies that are out there in the markets. When things change in technology and how you access your system, keeping up to date and being on the cutting edge of what technology is. And then I had mentioned it earlier, starting off with enterprise customers and kind of moving the other direction of smaller customers gave us some good experience in being scalable. The software we're going to go over today, our Orchid platform, is good for anything from a single site or even single camera application, being a very small deployment, all the way up into entire enterprises with the same familiarity of the same platform across the board. And everything that we do is based on open source and open standards. So you're not locked into something that's proprietary when you're dealing with our systems. So I'm going to jump over real quick to our product page, jump out of the PowerPoint, and I'll go back and forth a little bit here. But if you go to ipconfigure.com and go to products, you'll see our different product platforms that we're going to concentrate here on today. I'm going to focus mainly on software. I do want to say a little bit about our servers. If you are looking for a turnkey solution where we provide you with the software and the hardware all bundled into one piece, IP Configure does make our own servers in-house. We assemble these in-house, we burn them in, we test them, put the software on them, do some configuration in the pre-staging for you if that's included with the sales order, and send out a server that is turnkey ready to go for our solution. But as you'll see when I get into the software, this is definitely not a requirement. Our servers, just on a quick overview, go anywhere from small economical servers that deal 6, 12, 18, up to about 80 IP cameras on a server. For those cost-effective entry-level solutions, or getting up into larger enterprise deployments, going into servers that will do hundreds and hundreds of cameras with hundreds of terabytes of storage. So to focus on the product, again, Orchid was born around that simplicity and kind of scaling back what we were already doing on an enterprise level back in the beginning. So our original launch was the Orchid Core VMS, which to this very day is still the integral part of an Orchid solution. Orchid Core VMS is your recording software. So if I jump back over here to our presentation, Orchid Core is the recording engine on what's going on in our software solution. Orchid is your interface for your cameras. It can be a local interface and a standalone type solution. And it's how you record and access your cameras in a solution. Everything that we do at IP Configure is web browser based interface. So there is no thick client that you have to download and maintain and make sure it's updated. Everything we are doing is using common current protocols built into all web or most web browsers that are out there on the market. And if you are using a browser that does not have some of the protocols we use, we have ways around that, which I'll show you when we get into our live demo on the Orchid Core and Orchid Fusion VMS, dealing with things like low bandwidth mode and things of that nature. So we keep it accessible from anywhere you need to get it to, providing the proper network configurations in place. It does not matter if you're on a PC, if you're on a Mac, if you're on a an iPhone, if you're on an iPad, an Android, whatever device you're using in today's society has a modern web browser built into it, and you're able to access your video using just the web browser. This is a full interface. It's not like a web client that is only featured in certain features where you have to have a full thick client to do configuration and everything else. It is a full inclusive web interface for everything we're doing in the web browser. So Orchid Core, the recording side of our software, is very flexible in how we deploy this software. Again, we can give you a turnkey solution on the hardware side with hardware that we put together, or you can source your own hardware. Some people even choose to use existing hardware, providing it meets the requirements needed for recording the cameras. Everything that we need to run our software is in our own installer packages. So if you go to our product page here and go to the download section on the Orchid Core VMS, everything that we need to run that software is in these installer packages. You can see that we have Windows versions, we have Linux versions, and even getting down into our Debian distributions, where we can do things like ARM embedded processors and things of that nature. Very, very scalable in what we're using for operating systems on the software. Again, being web browser based, to be a client into the system, we just need a web browser. We are not dependent on what operating system you're running on. So that gives us a lot of flexibility in how we deploy this on hardware. The software itself, very, very simple to use. If I jump over to a live demo here, again, I'm in a web browser. I navigate to where that Orchid core server is, log in to the system, and I get a very, very simple interface. I have what you see here in front of you is the camera stage itself, and the camera bag. Our camera stage is where we manipulate video, whether it's live view or playback. It's where our cameras are populated. This is scalable, and sizable, so we can go up to the amount of cameras that you need on the screen, and we can manipulate those cameras and windows to what your layout needs to be. So if you're dealing with things like panoramic views or hallway corridor format views, we can drag those solutions around to fit the window scaling that you're looking for in the video, so that you're getting the utmost use of the video space on your camera stage. Our camera bag, the little plus sign over here, is where our cameras are located that reside on this particular server. So if we play around here, we can drag some cameras over. I can do that either through a drag and drop interface and size to the size that I'm looking for, or I can do a simple double click and it'll populate the next available position that I have in the screen. Everything that we have on the cameras should be what you need for a modern IP camera. We've got our live view here. If you're dealing with PTZ cameras, we have our drag and drop controls for pan, tilt, and zoom cameras on the screen. Scroll mouse, zoom in and zoom out, or clickable features for your PTZs, including PTZ presets that we can save. So we can quickly call up specific PTZ presets and call them up and save them as we're navigating through the video. And we also have, in our latest version, a support for a embedded de-warping of 360 panoramic cameras. What this does, because we're using open source and open standards on the de-warping and doing it within our own software, we're kind of agnostic to what 360 cameras you're using. We can go in and de-warp a 360 view on just about anybody's 360 camera and give you a perspective or a panorama view, so you're getting the most out of that 360 camera, moving into things like digital PTZ or even panorama modes where you're de-warping that 360 into a full de-warped image. Live view. Oh, one other thing I'd want to mention is the low bandwidth mode. So we use a protocol called WebRTC to live stream the video over networks in the most efficient way possible. WebRTC is a very common format. You see it in a lot of streaming media in web browsers nowadays, even outside the video security industry. And we find it's the best carrier for that video signal with the utilization of the bandwidth in place. But the browser that you use has to support WebRTC. Google Chrome is probably the best browser to use with ours, but if you are running into a browser that does not have WebRTC support, we still support what's called a low bandwidth mode. The low bandwidth mode is dual purpose. It's not only getting you into browsers that don't carry support for WebRTC, but it also gets you into a situation where we can effectively take video, transcode that video into a format that is pushable over very low bandwidth connections. We have instances with some of our customer retailers, et cetera, that are dealing with very low bandwidth situations out to the stores, but they still want to be able to bring their video across cellular networks, WANs, even old dial-up connections, et cetera, and deal with the low bandwidth situation, and you still get usable video from point A to point B. It may be a reduced frame rate, but it's not going to be something that is unusable as video. In instances where you don't have the bandwidth available, you're not sitting there looking at a spinning circle or a failed connection, you have something that's usable. Again, live mode, you see the little purple icon here that says we're in a live mode. We can view video. We can very quickly review video. Again, going towards the simplicity part of our software. We don't have to jump into another page to do a search. We don't have to get out of our live mode to go back and review video. We can very quickly jump to previous events and look for things like motion in the scene or looking for objects being removed from a scene very quickly just by jumping through the timeline bar here. If the timeline bar by default is a very small window, but if you need to expand that, it's very quick to expand or focus in on the timeline bar. I'm using my scroll wheel on my mouse here to where I can be very, very detailed in what I'm looking for in the video and very quickly jump to motion events that are almost in real time. Or I can expand my timeline bar out to over several days of video and quickly jump back without having to jump into another window or an advanced search back to the 27th of April here, back to the 24th of April, and really quickly get through my video and find the events that I'm looking for. I do have normal controls over here for fast playback and play forward, or slowing it down to even a quarter of a speed in your live, in your playback, so that you can focus more effectively on what you're viewing in the video. If you want to go back to live mode, you just click on that purple icon that says live, and it'll take you right back to your live video. And then we have some advanced features in here as well. We have a second timeline bar on the bottom here that'll let you lock in the loop of video that you're playing to a specific timeline for things like exporting the video or really getting granular into the video if you don't want to use the scroll wheel piece. If you know a specific time and date, it's very easy to jump into your system calendar here and see when you have recorded video on your system and when you don't. The green dots indicate that there's recorded video on the system. And I can very quickly, if I'm looking for an incident on Monday the 20th at 9 p.m., go Monday the 20th at 2100 hours, hit go, and jump very quickly into that video, that playback video on all the cameras. You also have unlinking if you're doing things like a live situational awareness event. So here I've got the same camera up here. Let me go ahead and remove this and bring this out for size. I've got the same camera view going on here. I can unlink one where that camera has its own timeline bar, and I can still maintain situational awareness of what's going on in that live window, and then go play back that video and find what was going on in the incident, still watching live mode and play back to the video at the same time. And I can do that over as many as cameras as I need populated on the stage. Downloading video is very simple. You can either take and set your timeline bar down here to the window that you're looking for, the loop you're looking for on the download, and click this download icon, or I can leave it wide open as large as I want and hit the download icon and kind of refine what I'm looking for. So if I want to export video on the 29th from noon to 1 p.m., I can go over here and go 12 o'clock and specifically start my video at noon. And then I can go in here and say I want to go to the 29th at 1300. So I'm exporting 1 hour of video very quickly. We export in two different file formats for cameras outside of our dewarped video. We have the MKV format, which is the raw video as it's recorded on the system. So that is your file format that is, simply stated, the raw video as it was recorded. And then we have a common playback format in the MOV file that you can download, share with police departments across your company, whatever you need, and that doesn't need any kind of special player or anything else. Again, keeping in that simplicity, we don't want you to have to go find a playback viewer or open up a folder to find the playback viewer to play back your video. It's keeping it very, very simple as we're doing these downloads. The other piece in dewarped video, in our latest version, we have in our exports the capability of dewarping in the playback viewer as well. So this one will export with a playback player for you that has all those dewarping capabilities, so that you can export that full 360 video and then go in later, either in that playback of that video, and go ahead and do your dewarping and hone in on things that are contained in that full 360 video in a more manipulable fashion. The Orchid core software, again, can be standalone. This can be a single site application. And in this, we have all of our configurations over here in our menu. We can We can get into the camera configurations and kind of manipulate in here the different recording modes, the streams coming from the cameras, how we capture those streams, camera names, everything else around that nature that you would want in the setup of your camera. So we pull a camera stream from the camera here, and we can add additional streams, or we can manipulate streams that already exist on the camera and record them a bunch of different ways. We can do a continuous recording with motion detection so that you record everything and put tick marks on the camera stage there that show where motion is detected all at the same frame rate. We can do a continuous recording without motion where we just record everything and we don't need to throw up the tick marks because we know that we're recording everything. We can do a recording only when motion is detected so that if you want to save hard drive space, you record only when motion is detected in the video. We can do a proxy only mode if you have sensitive areas that you don't want to be recorded, but you still want a live view capability or maybe some, broadcasting type things. We have the proxy only mode with no video to be recorded. And then probably the most popular one is the continuous recorded with motion adaptive frame rate. What this allows is for us to record everything, but manipulate the frame rate to save us on storage space. So what we can say is, you know what, if I have motion, that's probably going to be an important event to me. Jump up to the threshold of what the camera can handle on the frame rate in that motion environment. This particular camera here looks like it's limited to 12 frames per second for some reason. Let me go grab a better camera to show you. So when I go in here and look at this camera, when I have motion, go ahead and jump that continuous with adaptive. Jump that camera up to a full frame rate. And we can handle whatever the frame rate of the camera is. If you have cameras that are doing 30 frames per second, that's fine. We can record 60, 120. We can handle whatever frame rate that camera will put out. But when I have motion, go ahead and give me the full capabilities of that camera or a lesser capability, but let's get above what I'm doing on my audit trail. But when there is no motion in the scene, give me something that shows there's nothing going on so I can still go review video. A good case for that is things like slip and falls or false testimonies. Somebody says, hey, I got into a fight and you should have it on camera. It was at 12 p.m. If I'm recording on motion only, I can't prove that you didn't get into a fight, or I can't prove that you didn't slip and fall, or whatever the case is. I can only prove that I don't have a recording of that video. Well, with motion adaptive frame rate, I have something that I can go back and show at a lower frame rate to save hard drive space. Nothing happened on this video when you're claiming that something happened. In addition to our camera settings here, we've got some focus on retention policies as well. We can do a couple different things here. We can look at what the disk utilization is of the cameras that are on the system. So I can see how much hard drive space is on that server that I'm working with, how much is available still if it's not in its recording first in, first out mode. And I can see what each camera is actually recording, how many days of storage I'm getting out of that camera, and what that retention span is and how much actual retention I've got on those cameras. And it's also color coded here to the cameras. So you've got a visual reference you can look up here and see if one camera is taking up a lot more hard drive space than another camera, and manipulate your settings around that so that you're evenly distributing your cameras on your system. The other side here is we've got an estimated retention policy here, so that a desired retention policy here, so that we can set priorities on cameras and also see with the camera settings that we have an estimation of what we should be getting out of video with the available hard drive space that we have. So you can see if cameras are, again, visual representation here, but you can see if cameras are running away and recording a lot more than they should be and other cameras are suffering for it. And you can also set priorities here so that, let's say you've got a camera that has to do with PCI compliance or entrances or things of that nature, where this camera is a lot more important than the other cameras that I have on my system. And I've got a policy that says I have to have 90 days of storage out of this camera. I can set the policy of that camera to get its 90 days of storage, and all the other cameras that were 34 days before have now adjusted down to around 30 days of storage, so that that camera that is more important gets its desired retention, and the other ones left at automatic pick up what's left over. We can set users here if we are in a single site application, and we can set those roles in the users. We can set them to an administrator who can do anything in the system, a manager who can get into the system, do anything in the camera stage and camera bag that we want, and also see what the settings are here, but not manipulate anything in the menus. We can do a viewer who can view video, PTZ cameras, playback video, but they can't get into the administration side of the system, or we can do a live viewer who can't play back video or anything else, but only view live video. And then we also have some troubleshooting pieces in here. Our system report will let us go in and see how much video we actually have recorded, how much of that video is motion versus how much is continuous recording. It'll let us see on a timeline bar here that we can adjust and manipulate to specific dates and times, any errors that we might have in the system, so you can quickly go through and troubleshoot your system. And we also have our system status screen that we can do some troubleshooting from here as well. If you have a camera that's offline and not recording, you'll know about it because it's red. So you can quickly visually see here where we have cameras that are having faults, having errors, and go in and do some basic troubleshooting from there. Verify will send a ping out to that camera to tell you, yeah, it's on the network. I've just probably got something wrong, either a password or something in a setting to where that camera is not recording properly, and I can go start my troubleshooting from there. Or I can see if a camera is even on the network at all. If I do a verify and it comes back red, I know that I don't have network communications to that camera and I need to start troubleshooting the network or the camera itself. To talk a little bit about licensing, our product is licensed on in the Orchid core, and I'll hit that on the Orchid Fusion as well. Our product is licensed on a per camera basis. This is a perpetual license. You buy the software, you own the software at the version that it's at. And again, it's on a per camera basis. Because we're not using thick clients, we don't have to tack on things like, you know, client licenses or additional clients or things like that. You can view as many users as you need through the browser, and it's unlicensed on the viewers. It's only licensed on a per camera basis. Here in the perpetual versions of Orchid Core and Orchid Fusion, you don't have to buy a base license and then add on cameras from there. It is strictly a per camera basis. So whether you want to buy one license for one camera or hundreds of licenses for hundreds of cameras, you scale the system the way you need on the licensing. We do carry an annual tech support and upgrades piece. So if you want access to the latest version of the software, if you want to be able to call our tech support and get some troubleshooting done if things aren't working out, etc., that is on an annual basis. We do include the first year of that for free, but it is not a model where it is absolutely required. I have personally a customer that bought our version of our software at the very first release that we have in hundreds of locations, and they are still running on the original version and have not seen a need to do any update. If that's the case and your software is working great for you, we don't shut you out or shut you down if you haven't paid your annual support renewals. But we also do offer that support and access to the updates on an annual basis. All right, that's a quick overview of what our Orchid Core software does. Orchid Fusion, which we're going to go into next. Orchid Fusion allows us to take those individual Orchid Core recording locations and manage all of them from one pane of glass. It's an aggregator of all those Orchid Core softwares that we have out there. Orchid Fusion, here, Orchid Fusion adds also several enterprise layer features to your system when you're getting into that multi-site application. It's fully scalable. I can add as many Orchid cores into my system and bring them together into an Orchid Fusion as I need. We have customers that have thousands of locations that are running on one Orchid Fusion and able to get to all their cameras in their system from one single pane of glass or one browser tab open. It is very firewall friendly. We have some things in there that we can do, especially on the secure side, with adding VPNs and NAT traversal, to where you don't have to go and set up a whole bunch of things in firewall settings and everything else. We can do a kind of dial home from the Orchid Core to the Orchid Fusion and get your video from point A to point B across WANs. It's also secure. We can run this in, same with Orchid Core, I didn't mention that, but with Orchid Core or Orchid Fusion, we can run in a secure mode using what we call SRTP encryption, so that we are encrypting the video that is going between the server and the browser itself, or the server and Fusion. And we're also securing the login session itself through HTTPS. Orchid Fusion is cloud ready. I'll talk a little bit about cloud services in a few minutes here, but it is, if you wanted to take and put this in your own cloud, if you wanted to manage your cameras from your own cloud, you can do so with the perpetual version of Orchid Fusion and manage all that yourself. Or IP Configure does have software as a service in our cloud video management platform, to where we will host your Fusion version for you on a monthly basis rather than having a perpetual license. We'll go over that a little bit more in depth in a few minutes here. Flexibility with Orchid Fusion is the same with Orchid Core. We can, everything we need is in our installer packages, so we can put this on any version, 64-bit version of Windows that you might have, or we can do Linux distributions all the way down to the Raspberry Pi versions, or even the ARM embedded processor versions. So very, very flexible in what we're doing. But again, this is also browser-based, so we're agnostic to what your client is. It can be a Mac, an iPhone, an iPad, etc. Logging into Orchid Fusion, we do a couple things differently here, but you're going to see a lot of similarities in what we did in Orchid Core. We can log in as the low bandwidth mode or full bandwidth mode. We do have your access agreements here, because this is going to oftentimes be facing many more people. We can put the access agreement in there, your end user license agreement, so that you can have people acknowledge that they've seen the terms and conditions. On this particular site, I don't have it showing, but we can also do single sign-ons, like logging in through your Google accounts or things of that nature. So I have my browser tab open. I'm going to show you a demo of a live customer site. We do have permission from this customer to use their demo site as a demo site. So if any of this looks familiar as a customer you might have seen before, or somewhere you may have frequented yourself, this is a live site. So I'm not going to change a lot, but I will show you where things are within this system. Interface is almost exactly the same as what you saw in Orchid Core, except we're mixing and matching from multiple sites. When I drop down these little menu bars up here, you can see that we're at different locations here. This is store 37509, and this is store 33262. When I open up my camera bag, you can see all those different locations. Here I've got 16 cameras at this location, 16 cameras at this location, and we make it very quick and easy to get through all the cameras that are in your system. Each one of these that I'm clicking on is its own individual site at a different location in a different city, with cameras running on a recorder that is at that site. If this is too much to deal with, when I get into customers that have thousands of sites, this might be a lot to deal with, so we can manipulate this in two different ways. We have a search bar up top here that goes off of the camera naming conventions, so that if my cameras are named properly, I can kind of scale this down and say, I don't want to see all these cameras. I just want to see cameras that are cash register cameras. So if I type in the word cache, it'll search for that keyword in the camera naming conventions and only bring up cameras with cache in the name. Or if I only want to see counter cameras or door cameras, etc., I can very, very quickly search through hundreds or even thousands of cameras in a system and look specifically what I'm looking for if my system is properly set up. The other thing we can do, not to jump too quickly into the menus, but I do want to show you some camera groupings, is that we can come in and create camera groups, so that if I'm constantly going to be looking for those cash register cameras, for those counter cameras, front door cameras, back door cameras, etc., I can very quickly come in here and create camera groups. We'll call this one cache. And I can come in and I can search across the entire system, or I can go to specific servers and say, I want to segregate this camera group out to be only cash register cameras. So I'll type in the word cache, and it'll show me all my cameras across my enterprise that have the name cache in the camera. And I can quickly add those into that camera group. If I go cache and just keep going cache, 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 I can very quickly add all those cameras into the camera group. And again, this is a live system, so I don't want to change their system. But if I were to go over here, I would see the camera groups down below, and I could have all my cache cameras, all my counter cameras, my front door cameras. Gives you a way of virtualizing your system out instead of it just being on a per server, per location. I can also, because I'm probably going to have a lot more people logged into this system, I can save different camera stages. So when I log into the system as Dave, I want to see these specific cameras here. I don't want to see, I want them pre-saved because this is what I check into when I log into my system, and these are the cameras I need to see. During the course of my day, I find that I'm changing cameras around and I find a view that I need to jump into 6, 7 times a day, whatever the case might be. I can save that as a different stage as well. And I can quickly get between different camera configurations that I've set up on my camera stage over here and jump into those cameras quickly. I can also cycle through those. So let's say I want to build a couple different matrices of cameras. I want to see these 8 cameras on the screen, and then a few seconds later, I want to jump into another set of cameras. I can cycle through those video matrices to quickly get through hundreds and hundreds of cameras in my system on a rotating basis. I can also share, let me take this back. I can also share these stages across multiple users. So I can have this on a per login basis. So when Dave logs in, these are the cameras that Dave sees. Or I can come in and say, I want to share this globally so that when I log in, I can see any stages that were shared globally across the entire system so that everybody has access to those save stages. Again, the live and playback, everything that we're going to be doing in the system is the same as we just saw on Orchid, so I won't spend a whole lot of time there. We just have it across multiple sites here as well. So that familiarity is already there from our Orchid core system. When we jump into the configuration side of the house, we can see that I can quickly see all the cameras that are in my enterprise, all the servers that are in my enterprise, see how many cameras are on that server, how many are online, and quickly ascertain if I have cameras that are offline. In this case at Burlington, I have a camera somewhere in that system that is offline without me having to go to each and every one of those sites to check on cameras. I'll go into notifications in a little bit here as well. And how we can get automatic alerts on those things. So if I click here, I can get into that system without going to a separate tab, pulling up that server separately. It's all in the same interface. And I can see that this camera here is down. It's not recording. And I can even come in here and do my troubleshooting and everything else from here. So I can go to my system status. I can go find that camera that's down. I can do a ping without having to log onto that site, log onto that box, and I can see that the camera is up on the network. I'm just not recording it, so I probably have a password or something that's wrong. Something has been manipulated in the configuration. But it saves me from logging into individual systems to check on what's going on in that system. The other piece in Orchid Fusion, a couple things that are different in Orchid Fusion from Orchid Core, again, because we're dealing with more enterprise features here. We're dealing with a different piece in the software. Our notifications let you set up notifications that are across your entire enterprise. So here I can set triggers on different pieces here. If a camera in my system goes down, I can see that I can get a notification through an email alert that that camera has gone offline. If I don't want repetitive emails, I can also set that up to say, you know what, if a camera goes offline and has been offline for more than 30 minutes, go ahead and notify me again so that I know that it's not just a glitch in that camera or a power outage or something of that nature. I've got a camera that's been offline for some amount of time. I can do that on any camera in the system, or I can go down and get granular into what cameras maybe are more of a priority for me, and go to specific cameras or even entire servers. I can do notifications on an entire site being down. So server unreachable lets me say, hey, I'm not able to communicate from Orchid Fusion to that Orchid core box. I want to be able to see if an entire site has gone down. That's going to be important to me, and I want an email alert on it. On the same scale that we did on the camera side, we can say, I don't want repetitive here. If that server's been down for more than 30 minutes, yeah, go ahead and let me know on another notification. But until then, let's not get repetitive. Server errors. more than just that server is not being able to be reached from Orchid Core, if there's a glitch in the software, the cameras aren't recording properly, things of that nature. Instead of your whole entire server being down, if the software is not operating the way it's supposed to on that server, we can get a notification as well so that you can log into that server through the interface here, go into your server interface and see what's going on and why our software isn't recording properly. And we can do IO errors. So let's say we're recording on a RAID array. I've got 10 terabytes of expected storage, but a hard drive goes down. Rather than relying on the beeping coming from the hardware that might be locked away in a closet somewhere, we can get an email alert that says, hey, you're supposed to be seeing 10 terabytes of storage. Now we're only seeing 8 terabytes of storage. That's usually indicative of a hard drive being down. Send me an alert that says there's something wrong with my storage or my hard drives. We can also do granular permission groups inside here. So rather than just having an admin, a manager, a live viewer, or a viewer, we can get very, very granular on what we do inside of our permission groups with our users. So I can come in here and say, when this specific group of people logs in, and I can add users into that group based on their logins, when this group of people logs in, I want them to have these different capabilities within the system. And I can do it into individual camera levels, server levels, or across the entire enterprise. When this person logs in, or when this camera group logs in, they are allowed to do everything on the system, or maybe you don't want them to, or you want them to only be able to view live video, or view live video and export video, or manipulate PTZs, playback video, etc. You get into your granular permissions of what they're allowed to do, and then you can also revoke permissions. So if I say on a global basis, let them do everything across the entire system, but I don't want these people to be able to move PTZs at this specific location on this specific camera because they keep leaving the PTZs pointing somewhere that I don't want them being able to do so. So I can give or take away permissions that I need in the system accordingly. And then I think one of the biggest add-ons to this system, if I jump back, and I know I've veered way away from the presentation here, but Fusion brings us the capability of adding in this system and kind of doing a what we call build your vision. The system itself, very basic. In about 40 minutes here, I've been able to go over what Orchid Core does, what Orchid Fusion does, and very simply put, it's a recording software that's scalable that we can get to from anywhere. It's secure. But there are some things that modern systems are running into, and rather than putting in, you know, rather than being a competitor to a whole bunch of different people out there and coming up with our own analytics, we've chose to be that open company that we're talking about and partner with companies out there that are experts in the field that they're in. We've got several integrations that we've done through what we call our apps platform that enhance your system into building out the system based on the needs that you have. A common analogy I use is your cell phone. Your cell phone can do a ton of things, but it's usually through an app market and third-party softwares that you're bringing into that cell phone to enhance the capabilities of what that smartphone is. And we do the same thing here with our apps platform. So we're able to come in and add in third-party applications, maybe a license plate recognition software, some advanced intelligence on video searching or analytics, point of sale systems, access control systems. Rather than just having specific strategic partnerships, we will work with anybody that's open so that we can go out there and work with you on your system. And you say, hey, I have this certain company that I work with for this analytic. Do you integrate? If we've done an integration in the past and they're already built in as an app, we can quickly bring them into your system, or we can work with you to get a hold of that company, providing they have open APIs that we can work with, and bring their software into your Orchid system, your Orchid Fusion system as an app on the system. Rather than having all those different integrations built onto your system, you do it on an a la carte kind of build your system uh, version. So this particular customer wanted license plate recognition built into their system. So our integration with PlateSmart is done. I don't have their logins on their live system where I could show you, but we've basically taken their full LPR from PlateSmart and added it in as a tab into your Orchid Fusion, where you can go manipulate and look up plates and look up car colors and things of that nature, and find those incidents coming from that third-party software partner brought into your system into a single pane of glass. Going back to our products, that's Orchid Core and Orchid Fusion. Again, that is our perpetual licensing model. We also have the cloud version where we can basically take your Orchid Fusion software for you and host it into our colo or our cloud, and you can access that video from anywhere. That does change it from a perpetual licensing into a monthly subscription cost. So you're basically having us host your Orchid Fusion for you, and that's what you saw here when I logged into this customer. It is hosted in our cloud so that their users can get to it from anywhere that they're trying to access their system, and it gives you a lot more accessibility. That is on a per month basis instead of the perpetual, but it also brings you some benefits. Getting into our software as a service, providing you're on a Linux system, we can push out your Orchid Core updates for you as part of that software as a service in our cloud model. So that you're not, if you're in an enterprise and you have hundreds and hundreds of Orchid Cores out there recording, when we come out with a new version, you may not want to have to push those updates out to every single one of those locations. If you're subscribed to our cloud model and our software as a service, we can actually do some of that updating for you. And then we really build things around the relationship that we have with the integrators and the end users and the customer using the software. We want to hear the feedback. We want to hear how you're actually using your system, and we can actually build services in the background on the projects around that. We have some specific customers that have asked us, can you do this task for me in the system rather than me having to do it on a regular basis? Some reporting, some troubleshooting, some camera notifications and things like that. We can add those in as services. It's all a matter of communication with us on what you're looking for in your system. That, in a nutshell, is our Orchid Core, our Orchid Fusion, and our Orchid Cloud services and our SteelFin servers. I'd like to open it up for questions, and I see one up here already. I did forget to mention that. I apologize. What camera manufacturers do we work with our system? Everything that we're doing, we try to stick to open standards as much as possible, so that you don't have to, as a user, keep up with all the changes and what versions are out on the camera side and everything else. So we're doing everything through ONVIF standards. ONVIF, if you're not familiar with it, the Open Network Interface Forum, is a standard in the security industry that most security camera manufacturers work with, that we can pull every bit of information that we need to set up, manipulate that camera, interface with that camera through the ONVIF Profile S standard. If you are working with a camera that is not an ONVIF camera, we can do what we call generic RTSP streaming, to where we can actually pull that video in through an RTSP stream into our system without needing advanced camera drivers and everything else. If you get into a situation where you have to have specific camera drivers, that is not something that is 100% off the table. Contact us, contact your salesperson at IP Configure, and we can always have that discussion. I generally find that, unless you're using a lockdown proprietary camera that is meant only specifically for that camera manufacturer software, I can work with just about any camera manufacturer out there and bring that IP video into the system. So we still have some time here on your session. There's a Q&A box. If you have questions that you want to jump into, go ahead and ask in the Q&A and we can go from there. All right, give it a couple more minutes here just in case. How much is your SaaS platform? Okay, so our pricing model, everything we do is through distribution. And a question just came up, what distributors do you go through? If you look on our website, if you go to partners, at the bottom of our partners page, any of our pages on our partner site, whether it's our reseller platform, I'm sorry, our resellers, our cloud service resellers, or our technology partners. If you go to any of those sites, at the bottom, you will see all the distributors that we're carried through. We have relationships with Annexer, CSC, Graybar, and ScanSource. Annexer also carries our international distribution. So if you are doing projects outside the United States, we can reach anywhere in the world with our Annexer distribution. Uh, Pricing, how much is our SaaS platform? Um, our SaaS platform MSRP is done a little bit differently. That is the one case where it's not on a per camera basis. What I'll discuss here is MSRP, and then if you are an integrator who signed up as a partner through one of our pages here, we can work with your sales team to get you what your dealer cost would be. But as an MSRP, our SaaS platform is $59 per server. What that covers, and you'll see it here on our webpage if you go here, what that covers is up to $25, up to 25 cameras on a specific server. If you want to go above 25 cameras, there is $2 MSRP for each additional camera. So that's not on a per camera basis again. So that's getting out of that perpetual licensing. And this is on a monthly basis. So it's $59 per server. You're not paying the licensing cost on top of that. So the perpetual licensing cost on top of that. So you're moving that from a buy a license to a monthly subscription fee. If you're getting above 25 cameras and those add-ons are getting expensive, let's say you're getting up into 80, 90 cameras on a big beefy server, we do have an unlimited option as well that is a MSRP $169 per camera, per server, to add on as many cameras as you'd like into that system. That's the software as a service plan. If you're not doing the pushed updates, from us, motion monitoring, alert monitoring, all those other services that we have in the software as a service plan, you can do a $5 per camera per month system instead of the $59 per camera. If you want to do a, onesie twosie add-on piece, or you don't want to subscribe to those services that we offer in the software as a service. Orchid Core, the perpetual software, cover licensing there. Orchid Core in the standalone version, MSRP is $89 per camera. And the Orchid Fusion is MSRP $189 per camera. Okay, give it a few more minutes here for questions. Again, anything I've covered here, we will be recording the webinar, or we have recorded the webinar, so you'll be able to replay that at a later date, or sales@ipconfigure.com, or your individual sales account representative at ipconfigure can answer more in-depth questions or walk through anything further, demos, specific needs on projects and things of that nature. It's easy to get a hold of us. Any other questions? Give it a few minutes here. All right. Do we support other languages? So in the software itself, it's all going to be a US-based English version of the software, but we do have support structure for additional languages. If you look on our website, and go to ipconfigure.com, if anything you need on our documentation is going to be within the specific product itself. If you go to our documentation and go into our knowledge base, you will see additional language support and what languages that we do support in the documentation. Find it here. I don't use it often, pardon me, but we do have the additional language support in the documentation, but not in the software product itself. That's something that I can check with our international manager on to see if that's coming at a later date. I honestly don't have an answer to that one right now, but we can follow up with that. Last piece I'll put in here, everything that I've gone over, everything in this webinar, additional questions, things like that, we do have a full free training site. So if we go to training.ipconfigure.com, or you don't have to remember that if you just go to our website, ipconfigure.com. At the top of our page, we have the training here. So training.ipconfigure.com is a full free portal. You log in here. Oh, get the right one. So when you're on our training site, we've got all of our courses here. We've got 3 different layers of courses for each piece, be it Orchid Core or Orchid Fusion, on our current versions of the software. We have an installer training, which will teach you how to install the software either in a Windows or a Linux environment. It takes you through how to download the software, how to install the software. I didn't really go over it in the presentation. I apologize, I left that part out, but our software is super, super simple to install. Literally, it's about a 5-minute installation process to get the software downloaded, get your cameras up and running, and be recording. It's not a huge process. It's not a heavy lift. We have our administrator training, which will teach you everything I went through in those menus, how to add users, camera groups, rights and permissions, Active Directory tie-ins, all that stuff is in our administrator training. And then our user training is very simple, going over the camera stage, the camera bag, how to play back video, view video live, etc. And that's all covered in the user training. And again, completely free. You can take that and use that as your end user training when you're deploying the system as well. And that's on our Orchid Core and our Orchid Fusion software. All right, leave it open for a couple seconds here, a couple more seconds on questions. And if we don't have any additional questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up this session. I thank everybody for their time. Again, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to any sales representative at IP Configure. If you need to know who your sales representative is, just email sales@ipconfigure.com and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. Thank you for your time.